Hey there!
Hello there.
Do you want to see some shocking commentary from the people that made the first 3 James Bond movies? Commentary that was so shocking that Albert R. Cubby Broccoli immediately recalled and banned them? Illegal! Then go watch part 1. Link is in the description. It's got a bunch of saucy stuff in it.
Positively shocking.
So check out part 1 and then come back here. Are you still here?
Yarm.
This video is a continuation of part 2, which contained a compilation of interesting little bits from the banned LaserDisc commentaries for Dr. No that were not included in part 1.
Tidbits.
This part contains the remaining interesting bits in the second half of the Dr. No movie. So I'd recommend you check out part 2 prior to watching this.
Just do it!
Alrighty, let's not waste any more time. Let's do this!
I think the thing that the best of them all was, of course, not Dr. No, but On Her Majesty's Secret Service, by far the best novel he ever wrote.
When I came onto the picture, there were 4 scripts. The last one was written by quite a good writer. He wrote a couple of quite interesting English films. But Dr. No had become a chimpanzee. Don't laugh. He was a monkey, an ape. And we were about 2 weeks short of going on location. And Cubby Broccoli said, look, I know Terence writes quickly. And I was locked up in a hotel suite in London, the Dorchester. And I rewrote the script going back to the book. We used much more of the book than was originally in the other scripts. And we went back, I'd say, to about 75%, if not more, back to the original story. And this is one of the things that always surprises me. You make a film, you spend a lot of money buying a book, and then you hire 10 other writers to get as far away from the book as you possibly can.
That's the double driving the car, if you look very closely.
We said to Sean, come on, drive up and let's see. And it cleared it by about that much. So I said action, and as the car came around the corner, it was bouncing on the road, and it was going about 1.5 feet off the road, not 4 inches. And I tried to shout, stop it, but there was no way. And I just honestly prayed like that, and I said, please God, please God. And he bounced just before, and he came down just under, and he went under. I was nearly killed at the bottom here. That's me with the camera here. And but for a clever assistant who dragged me out of the way, I would have been killed because I had my eye on the eyepiece and the camera was hit by the car. Now, this guy was the real driver, and I'd given him $25 to let us shoot the scene. And I said, do you want to make another quick $10? And he said, yes. And he comes up and he says, what happened? And he got a bad laugh. Because it was so stupid. It was one of those stupid things you don't think of at the time. Then when we went back to the dubbing theater, we used another voice in any case for him, and someone said, how did it happen? And then Sean says, I don't know, this is one of the goodies we kicked up on the thing, because none of this scene was in the picture. And he just said, I don't know, I think they're on their way to a funeral. And got an enormous laugh.
But at the time we made this film, you have to remember, he was hardly known at all. It was Ben Fish who turned to me and said, what about that Sean Connery? Don't you think he might make a good Bond? And I said, yes, I think he might. Would Harry like to see a reel or 2 of our film? He said, yes, he would. And I sent it up to him to see. And I don't know what went on behind closed doors or how it was constructed. But the upshot of all that was that they cast Sean, who you must remember was not a star. He was the supporting actor. Here was a censor problem we had, because we shot Anthony Dawson. I'm not sure how many bullets we finally used, but repeater bullets, like 3 or 4 times, bang, 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 bang. And everybody, the censor at that time, thought that this was too brutal and horrific. And I have a feeling in some countries it was cut. I mean, it was just one shot. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes, there's only 2 on that. Yes, I think it was 3 or 4 originally, which I had on, and maybe we cut just down to 2 and got away with the censor on that. It was also early days for showing a pistol with a silencer on, too.
A lot of people said we were nasty to shoot, that it showed Sean as being a very nasty man, that he shoots the other man in cold blood half a dozen times, you know. This is something that always distresses me in pictures, is day for night. You go to such enormous lengths to make it look vaguely day for night. And then they do, your show copies are wonderful. Your show copies are, the ones you show in, you know, Radio City Music Hall and all that, absolutely impeccable. Then when they go out into general distribution, you could be in broad daylight. They just don't give a damn. They just make the prints, you see, on a certain printing number, and even with computers, it's better now because you can, but they don't bother. They haven't time. They're going to make 2,000 prints in 5 days or 8 days or something.
Everybody had an opinion about how dark or how light it should be. Seemed to look all right on television. That was a great thing. Oh, you'll never be able to see it on television.
Out of sheer desperation, Cubby called the head of Columbia's casting or talent department, a fellow called Max Arno, and he said to Max, would you have a look at this girl? And Max Arno said, look, I can't tell you if she can act or not, but my God, she looks great. And I was to meet her at the airport, and I had a ticket to take her to Jamaica or her return ticket to LA. And I took one look at her, and I said, where's your luggage? Put it, and we took her to Jamaica. That's how Ursula got this part.
It's been a constant source of confusion as to who wrote the score for this film and the extraordinary James Bond theme with which it opens. Monty Norman is officially credited with the film, but apart from Underneath the Mango Tree and Jump Up, Jump Up, he had relatively little to do with the score for Dr. No as it was finally released. And John Barry wrote the James Bond theme, although he was not permitted to claim authorship as Norman was contracted for the score. Barry recalls getting a telephone call on a Friday, coming to a Saturday meeting that was attended by Monty Norman and the 2 producers, being given the length of the music cue they were looking for, and turning in the finished theme on the following Tuesday. He borrowed liberally from a couple of his earlier hits, which, not having been hits in the United States, made the resulting theme sound even fresher.
Ian Fleming, he thought that Ursula was even better than his honey child rider in the book. I asked Noel to speak to Sean, because I said, Sean must realize that it's not enough to be a good actor these days. You've got to help and, you know, collaborate with the press and all sorts of things. And I said, you know, you should tell him not to go to the governor's house wearing a wind cheater. You know, it's not the best. So Noel gave him a kind of talking to, which I think helped a lot. But I then became very friendly with Ian. We used to have lunch together every Thursday. Now, Ian has this enormous aura about him of being a tremendous gourmet because of the meals he describes and the splendid wines that you drink. But every lunch we ever had and every meal I've ever had with him was the same. He used to have scrambled eggs, and then he used to have about 4 large brandies and ginger ale. So much for this great gourmet. And I used to feel very embarrassed because I'd be having a damn good, we'd take alternate weeks to pay, you know. And I felt terribly guilty, you know, and after this had been going on for about a year, I said, look here, this is silly. I must do 3 at a time and you do 1 because, you know, I'm having wine, I'm having a 4-course lunch and everything. He said, dear boy, he said, you've made me a very rich man. He said, you know, I'll keep on like this, he said. And unfortunately, he died after From Russia with Love. I had to shoot the close shots of this and them in the, because I didn't have enough time. I shot the whole of the sequence in 1 day. I had about 10 weeks for the whole film. He was a weightlifter and a bodybuilder in those days. Now he's a golfer. I taught him to play golf.
But I think Bond is fairly ruthless. I don't think that he's ever been portrayed as, if you put him in a corner, you're not going to get something very ruthless out of him to get him out of a problem or a hole.
When we went to Jamaica and we made this picture, there were 800 hotel bedrooms in Jamaica. 1 year after Dr. No, there were 4,000.
Ursula's voice was difficult to understand. There were certain areas in it that you couldn't understand quite what she said, and we said for clarity we used the little Monica van der Zyl, her name was, as her voice. But it suited her, it was her voice, all right. She was very pretty, very beautiful girl. I don't think that if you really ask him, Terence liked this tank, a thorn in his side. I don't think he quite liked the idea of this. The weather turned bad on them and they weren't able to get all the material that they should have been able to make this. Very difficult to try and make this believable. It really isn't very, very believable. They gave him one of his old suits. This, in fact, it was. Oh, he said, we're going to put glass in there, and we're going. That's the window to the sea. And I said, well, no one told me about that. Well, what are you going to put in the window to the sea? Oh, he said, we'll do back projection. We'll put fish and sea in there. I couldn't find a plate. I couldn't find a normal looking plate. That was a plate that came from Disney. He chose this plate. He said, all right, well, let's use that with the big fish. And I said, well, there isn't a lot of it. He said, it doesn't matter, we'll make it work. You know, let's order up a back projection print and we'll use that with the big fish. Okay, I said, it'll look very strange. No, he said, that'll be all right. The glass is magnified. Okay, I said, all right, fine. So I got this material, came from America, had to be flown over. Now you see in the background is all that back projection. But every now and again, it ended. So I was continuing. This whole scene was made up of small, short cuts. Because the back projection kept ending, because I didn't have enough of it to run the scene for him. And then there's this wonderful line of dialogue, which he injected right there on the spur of the moment. That was a very good moment. Of course, lost today. That portrait had been stolen from the National Gallery in London. And he says that's where it ended up. It was a long, long time before they could find it. If you start to analyze it shot for shot, this is just a piece of tubing on the silent stage, I think, or on some corner of the studio. Didn't want to notice. And him crawling down it, as you can imagine. It's the biggest piece of, cinema deception, I think you could call it. Because look at it, it's just a round tunnel. Yes, this is the thing they said put us over budget.
That took the whole of the largest stage at Pinewood. And I mean, that set today would cost you $1 million, maybe $1.5 million to build. And it was almost entirely constructed. I believe the piece on the left was matted in. Everything else was built there. I don't know how the hell he did it. And ever since this picture, everybody's been offering me things like Star Wars and every picture that's ever got science fiction in it. And I'm totally disinterested. I knew nothing about any of this. And I hope to God I never have anything to do with a reactor or a science fiction thing again in my life. I've got no interest whatsoever in it. But I keep getting these things. They say, you'd be so good with it.
Oh, yes. I'd forgotten about it. That's right, these damn crabs. Oh, my goodness me. They practically all died, I think. Oh, yeah, we didn't. In the book, the crabs were eating her. That was what she was laying out there. The whole load of crabs crawling up and supposed to be going to eat her. But we did try and make the crabs didn't want to know, and they all eventually were dying, and it became a disaster, but it didn't matter, so we didn't use them. There were shots of them, but I couldn't make it work. They looked so awful, I'm afraid, because they weren't really doing anything at a time when everything was going on. There she was in a passive state, as it were, that just held up everything. If the crabs had been crawling, or I could have made them like the rats in From Russia with Love, it would have worked. But it didn't matter. Look, it was very quick. The perils of Pauline tied down there, and he comes and grabs her and rescues her. And here comes our tag, which eventually, of course, was on all the James Bonds. They always started with an exciting sequence which got your audience, and they ended with a tag which we hope made the audience laugh, smile, go out feeling good.
We didn't have an ending either. We cooked this one up on the set as well. This became then a key thing in all the Bond films. We always tried to end it in a way like this, and especially the very last shot of the picture. It was as far as we were allowed to show. And this is the payoff, the hand letting out the rope dropping into the water.
Cut. Finish. I have nothing more to say.
Woo! And that's the last of the Dr. No commentary from the band LaserDiscs. Let me know what your favorite bit was in the comments. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. It may seem like a small thing, but it really helps this channel out. Subscribe so you can be notified when I release the follow-up videos on From Rush with Love and Goldfinger. Well, that's about all for now. Have a stellar day.